And now it is my pleasure to present today's last SDG Action Talk and the last SDG Action Talk of the entire Global Festival of Ideas. And for that, we will be hearing from Salina Sanou, co-chair of Global Call to Action Against Poverty, or GCAP, which we all know and love. And Salina will be talking about people rising against inequalities through the Leave No One Behind national dialogues. We're really excited to hear more about that. So without further ado, Salina.
Wow. Yeah? My tag is... Okay, I remove it away. Huh? Okay, thanks. Okay, so my name is Salina Sanou, and I'm the co-chair of the GCAP, which is GCAP is a global campaign against poverty, and we came into existence at the beginning of the MDGs. So our aim then was to address inequalities through the MDGs or through a campaign to promote the MDGs. And when the MDGs came to an end, so we thought we redefined ourselves, and we wanted to know whether we would continue after the MDGs, and we saw that there was the need to continue, and so we continued as a new GCAP addressing the SDGs because...
High-flying players. Come and join us at the main game table in front of the plenary doors, and let's try and get climate action achieved this afternoon. Thank you.
Because we realized that the inequalities were still rising. In fact, they were rising higher and higher, and we thought it was time to continue with the campaign on the inequalities by using the SDGs. So GCAP supports people in their struggles for justice and brings individuals and organizations together to challenge institutions and processes that perpetuate inequalities. And we are a coalition of, we're a global coalition in several countries across 4 continents. So we are in 24 countries in Africa, we are in 13 countries in Asia, in 7 countries in Latin America, and 14 countries in Europe. And we are addressing inequalities through the Leave No One Behind dialogues in these countries. And currently, we are doing these dialogues in about 5 countries or 6 countries in Asia and in Africa. We are doing these dialogues in Pakistan. We're doing the dialogues in India, in Kenya, in Afghanistan, and in the Philippines. And we hope to replicate the dialogues in the other countries. So we're starting with 1 country in Africa, so far as GCAP, and then 5 countries in Asia. Nothing in Latin America for the time being. So giving the example of Kenya, this is how we mobilize people. We mobilize different groups, women. The target groups that we are working with are women, and we understand why, because of the gender discriminations against women. We are also working with orphans in most of these countries as a result of orphans from conflict or orphans from HIV and AIDS. We are also working with indigenous people. So in Asia, we're looking at the Dalits. And in Kenya, we are looking at indigenous peoples that live in the forests, the hunters and gatherers. And we are also working with the youth across these countries. And in a country like Kenya, the youth is quite important because of the problem of radicalization and terrorism that actually recruits youth as a result of unemployment in these countries. And then we're also looking at refugees because we have a lot of them across these countries. And we are also looking at street people that are not catered for by these policies. And therefore, these are people who are actually left behind as a result of the injustices, the discriminations that have happened over the years. So how do we do the Leave No One the dialogues at the national level. We do them very informally. We have a set of questions on how we engage communities. And our message is very simple. We tell people that these international frameworks like the SDGs or the Paris Agreement is about them. It's not about the elites. It's not about talking about them in cities like in New York or in Bonn, for example, but it is engaging at the grassroots with these people to understand. And we tell them that they're human rights. These frameworks are human rights, and they speak to their rights themselves. So we tell them, we try to build their capacity so that they can understand what these frameworks are about. In Kenya, for instance, we are doing them in 5 counties. We have translated these frameworks in local languages so that people can understand. In Pakistan, we are doing them also in about 5 provinces, and using the same methodology, translating them into local languages. So how do we mobilize these people? We meet them in schools. It can be in a church like this one, where we talk to them in churches. And mothers that are very busy, they bring their children, you can see, because they don't have anybody to babysit for them at home. So they bring them. It's a real spirit of leave no one behind. Everybody is in these particular groups. I have another picture that also shows different groups. You have the youth, you have people living with disabilities, you have people with different religious backgrounds coming together and discussing these issues of leave no one behind. So we have had great achievements in the sense that communities really do understand now these frameworks, and communities have developed their own action plans, which are aligned to the SDGs at the community level for implementation. Those are some of the things that they are doing currently. And we are hoping that in these countries, the outcomes of these reports can feed into the voluntary reports of the high-level panel coming up in July, that we can actually bring the voices of people to these different places so that, we can understand what the Leave No One Behind dialogues in these countries are contributing into these particular reports. So we've had some great achievements in the things that we do, but of course we also have challenges in the work that we do. Some of the challenges, of course, are lack of finances, lack of funds that we do not have to be able to mobilize as many as possible to contribute to the implementation of the SDGs. We are also having issues around capacities. The local communities also have issues of capacities. How can we build their capacities for them to understand, for them to be able to hold their governments accountable? We have issues of getting the right data, because we sometimes do not trust the data that comes from governments. We would like to have our own data, data that is driven by the people themselves, so that the agenda can be a people's driven agenda. So those are some of the capacity issues that we have in terms of challenges that we are trying to address in the different countries. We would like to scale up these dialogues to include bigger parts, to include a larger scope in a country. In Kenya right now, we're only doing it in 5 countries, but in 5 counties. But we would like for it to cover at least for the 42 the counties that exist in that country. In Pakistan, in India, and also in Afghanistan and the Philippines, we would like to have these dialogues to cover the entire country. We also like to address the issues of the dislink between these types of people and the dialogue with their national governments and also with their local governments, that they should be, because the SDGs is about everybody. It's no longer a UN issue. It has become a people's issue, and we think that people should be engaging with their governments, dialoguing with their governments around this, around the SDGs. So we are trying. This is another challenge. We are trying to see how can we bring people to start engaging with their governments on these issues, and develop monitoring and evaluation mechanisms where we can hold each other accountable, and our citizens can hold us accountable to the implementation of the things that we have signed up to. So governments that signed up to these frameworks, whether it was in Paris or New York, need actually to fulfill their role. And we want the citizens that they represent to hold them accountable to those particular agreements that they have signed up to. Thank you very much for listening.